leaves. I've got about 2 or 3. And then I have white peppercorns and black peppercorns. Just going to sprinkle those in there. You're going to get a little swirl. Now, basically our goal with this is to reduce this by about half. So you want a remaining liquid of about half the liquid. So if you used a cup and a cup, then you have 2 cups. And ultimately you're looking for about a cup to 3/4 of a cup of liquid left over. I also, just for good measure, I'm going to take my zester and lemon, and we're just going to zest a little bit of lemon into this. Just like that. So now that I got my reduction working, basically I'm going to start taking a look at the other things that I need to do. Earlier I was talking to Madeline, and really anytime that you're cooking or planning a family meal or anything along those lines, preparation is key. You want to have all of your mise en place, which basically mise en place translates loosely to everything in its place and everything has its place. So, you know, as you can see here, you know, I have my ingredients kind of all put together and prepared to use. And so a lot of times you see this on cooking shows, but it's actually what we do when we're cooking food commercially in the kitchen also. So my reduction is underway. That's going to start reducing. And now I've found the best English muffins that I've ever, it's pretty amazing. When I first moved to Effingham, there was a girl that lived here. Her name was Beth Westjohn. And she introduced me to Wolverman's English muffins. And I have a serious addiction to Wolverman's English muffins. So that's what I'm going to be using here today. I'm just going to put a cut through my English muffins. These are not fork split, so you know, I have to put a cut through them. So basically what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take these and I'm going to drop them into the toaster.
Hey guys, where can you get those muffins?
You know, we order them in, so we have to like get online and order them in. A lot of times they also like build like gift packs, and you know, they have a huge array, everything from sourdough English muffins to traditional classic. But yeah, so I'm gonna throw these into the toaster, and then Madeline, do you want to take them through your next step?
You bet.
All right.
I'm going to start off with it's a 1-minute Hollandaise sauce. It actually takes about 5 minutes if you include actually melting the butter. So, but once you have your butter melted, it all comes together in about a minute or so. And one of the things that I noticed when I first started playing around with this recipe is that if you have butter that's not a clarified butter, which basically means that the butter has been heated up and then the milk solids have been separated from the oil. If you're just working with a stick of butter, like what I'm doing, this is just 1 stick of butter that's being melted. As it's boiling or as it's coming up to temperature, you just want to keep stirring it with a spoon or jostling it. Otherwise, it will explode. And mine just exploded about 2 minutes ago. So I wasn't watching it too closely. So I'm just going to bring this up to a boil. The other thing that you can do is, yes, if you don't want to do your butter over the stovetop, you can get it going in the microwave. But you really have to be careful with that as well, because if you don't stop the microwave every 10 to 15 seconds, you will have more butter all over your microwave than you will in your bowl, which happened to me yesterday. So it's really a little distracting and a little disturbing when your butter starts exploding. But typically Hollandaise sauce is made with clarified butter, but I'm going to go ahead and use just a whole stick of butter with the milk solids. But what's going to happen is that after I pour it into a little vessel, the milk solids will drop and settle down at the bottom. And so when I pour this off, most of the milk solids will be left down at the bottom. So the butter is starting to boil. We're going to bring it up to about 200, 220 degrees, which basically all that means is once your butter starts to boil, you want to stop it before it browns, but it still needs to be nice and hot. Because in this Hollandaise sauce, we're going to start with an egg yolk. And then we're gonna add a ½ teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna go ahead and pour off my hot butter into a little pitcher. That way I can control the pour. And then a teaspoon of lemon juice. And it's not an exact science. I like maybe just a little extra lemon juice, because like now putting that zest in the Hollandaise sauce is so good. And then a teaspoon of water and a pinch of cayenne pepper. And now if you're sensitive to heat, you just might want to add your cayenne pepper at the end. All right, so we've given the egg, the lemon juice, the water, and salt and cayenne pepper, a little bit of a blitz. And then we're just gonna very slowly pour the butter into this. So when you first start off, you wanna do just a little bit of butter at a time, and that will help create the emulsion. Typically, if the Hollandaise sauce comes out a little runny, it's because you've added the butter too fast. You can start to see it's already starting, and the more butter, the thicker it becomes. So,
like magic.
I'll tell you what, now if you want to go ahead and do your next step, because this is really loud, Katie, you can go ahead and mute me and then come on back.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, so my English muffins actually just popped out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start throwing my ingredients together. That's actually gonna be the basis that the eggs will go on top of, and then the Hollandaise. And as you can see, it did not take very long at all. Whoops, didn't take very long at all for my reduction to get basically where it needed to be. Now, one of the things is during a reduction, I like to season or salt afterwards. And so I'm gonna add just a pinch of salt to this now. You can sometimes over salt something and then reduce it, and then obviously the salt flavor intensifies. So a lot of times I season throughout when I'm working, whether I'm working on stocks or kind of anything along those lines. But on something like this, I like to season a little bit afterwards. So I'm just gonna season with a touch of salt. And you know, one of the things that a lot of cooks forget to do is to taste their food. So, you know, tasting it all the way through is very important. Exactly what I'm looking for. Whew, it's got a good pop to it. You know, I was feeling a little bit, you know, the way our herbs are coming up, there's a ton of basil out there, bunches of dill and all this other stuff. So I decided what I was going to do was some kind of plays on different types of Eggs Benedict. One of the things is traditionally, a lot of times you see Canadian bacon. One of the things that I like to do, I like to use my favorite meats, and even if those are salamis or whatever. And so today what I'm actually going to be using is it's a product from a company called Smoking Goose out of Indianapolis. And they've been a smoke shop and cure house for probably 15 years now. As long as I can remember being here, we've been using them. But they make this amazing salami coco, and they make it with fenugreek. And it's so rich and it's so delicious, and the way that it just breaks up, it makes for what I would consider one of the best meats for Eggs Benedict. Now, one of the important things is butter. It's kind of the lifeline. A buddy of mine once told me, he said, you know, really as chefs, our only job is to create vehicles for butter and salt. Now, there's a level of that that's true. So I'm gonna butter real quick my English muffins.
Hey, Niall. I
Yo.
love the way, so when you prepared your English muffins, you basically cut them in half and then you're buttering them, and then are you putting them into the oven?
Yeah, so basically I'm just gonna build the base to it. So the first thing I do is toast it. And the goal with that is just to kind of get a nice crispy, traditional English muffin. It will also, this butter also creates a barrier of fat that doesn't allow for any of the juices or anything like that to make the English muffin soggy. So if you give them a little toast and you put a little butter on them, basically what you're doing is creating a seal so that, your English muffins don't get soggy. I mean, you don't want soggy English muffins, when you're eating Eggs Benedict. At least that's my feeling. So this here, salami cotto. So we're going to take this salami cotto. We're going to base it. Put it right down on top. And then I also have this another amazing salami from the same company. And this is called Dodge City. And this is actually made with fennel pollen. And it is, just another like really decadent, really, really nice sausage. So I'm going to lay this down. And I want to make sure that I use all this because, and I got to tell you, this with the fenugreek is just really, really, really amazing. And so basically, I've also got some fresh cherry tomatoes. It's a mix of yellows and some chocolate cherries and some sweet 100s. And so we're just going to mix just a bit of this. And then the white balsamic that I had previously, I'm actually just going to add just a little bit of this to that to add a little bit of acidity to it, and then a touch of salt. So we'll just season that a little bit. And you know what? While I'm at it, I think I'm going to throw a little black pepper in. And a touch of olive. And so we're just going to give this just a little toss, just like that.
Niall, we had a question about what sort of olive oil that you recommend.
The olive oil market's gotten a little weird. So I look for local products, generally coming from California, first press, extra virgin. And one of the things that I always say is a lot of times they stain the bottle green, but the actual olive oil really looks like canola. So, this is actually a friend gifted this to me, a chef friend of mine that's been in my life for a very long time, and he just gifted this to me. And I'll actually show you kind of the color on this olive oil. So it's got a real green kind of color. And like I said, sometimes, they taint or they put olive oil in green bottles. And so once you actually get into it, so, I like olive oil, especially in this type of setting that, tastes like olives. Like I want to be able to kind of get that, that first press freshness. So that's about it. The other thing is I had to go trim back a bit of basil from my basil plant today. And so I actually had a little bit of extra basil. So I decided I'm going to throw some of this basil in there. So I didn't want them to go to waste because half of it was doing really, really well and the other half was not. So I wanted to make sure that I got to use whatever I could on the plant. So I'm just going to toss a little bit of this into it too.
While you're tossing that, Chef, I'm going to say I did go ahead and share the links for both Wolferman's English Muffins and Smoking Goose in the chat for you all, so you have that information.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Katie.
Niall, don't you think that olive oils that are in, solid containers where they don't let the light through, doesn't that help preserve the olive oil a little bit better?
It does. A lot of times, I've found that as of late, some of the better olive oils are coming in boxes. It's almost like a box of wine, but it's, and really like when you talk about vinegars and oils and wine, it's, there are so many different levels of quality. And so, I always kind of look at all of those kind of as the same thing when it comes to that kind of phase and quality. So I've also got a little spinach that I roasted off here too. And so I'm going to add that to this. You can't really go wrong. If you enjoy, you know, whatever you're putting onto it, you know, it almost becomes kind of like an egg sandwich. So I'm going to take a little bit more of this.
We have another question. Somebody asking if there is a substitute for onion.
A substitute for onion to...
I will keep you posted. I'm not sure, just if there was any substitute for that.
Was it the onion that you, like the shallot?
A shallot.
That you put in the sauce earlier?
Yeah. I mean, you can always leave, I mean, if you're building, if you're talking about a substitute for onion, I mean, you could add chives to your reduction, but you could omit it also. One of the things that Madeline and I were talking about is the most important thing about cooking, I think, is, you know, first you need to learn the rules so that you can break them all. And so you don't necessarily, because big fancy cookbooks say you have to do something, you know, that's the beauty of cooking, is that it's really in the mouth of the beholder. So if onions don't appeal to you, then you can always omit it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these, I'm going to throw this into the oven, and then I'm going to get my eggs prepped, and I'm just going to pass this over to you, Madeline, as I get my eggs prepped for the next stage in cooking.
All right, perfect. I wanted to show you guys the Hollandaise sauce. I'm going to come around here a little bit closer. So you can see it's thick, but it's still pourable. And the nice thing about this too is that if it's too thick, you could just add a little bit of water. And then, but it's easier just to add a little bit of water at a time than if it's too watery, then you're trying to backtrack and so my technique for preparing my Trader Joe's English muffins is a little different than Niall's. I'm gonna go back over here to the toaster and make sure that they're toasting up and put it on so it's a nice light brown. And then after they come out of the toaster, I'll put a little bit of Hollandaise sauce and add the same thing as the butter. And then I'll take the other ingredients and build on top of it.
I do have one quick question for Chef Niall and then one for you, Madeline. Chef, they're wondering what temp your oven is on that you just threw your English muffins in?
Yes, I'm just looking for a quick toast and a little bit of a warm up. I don't want to cook anything. So basically I have them at 450 degrees, and I also have a high fan running. And so I'll probably have them in there for 3 or 4 minutes at that temperature.
Great, thank you. And then Madeline, what about broth instead of water?
For your poached eggs?
Yes.
You could do that. What I found is when doing poached eggs, I don't find a whole lot of flavor happens in the poaching water. I find that the flavor comes from seasoning the egg afterwards. You know, typically if you're frying an egg or doing an omelet, you're going to be adding your eggs, you're going to be adding the seasoning to the eggs while it's raw and while it's cooking. While you're poaching it, it's such a delicate process. You're really not going to be adding anything. The main component that you have to have in your poaching liquid is an acid. So I just added 2 teaspoons of just a white distilled vinegar. You can use lemon juice, you can use apple cider vinegar into the water, and what that does is it changes the pH so that the egg whites will stick to it. So I got the water up to a rolling boil, and then I was swirling it, and then crack your egg into a little vessel. Then you can pour it into the middle of the vortex, and you want to turn your heat off because you don't want it to boil and destroy and disrupt your pretty poached egg that you're creating. And so so then we're just going to keep the lid on for 4 minutes. 1.5 minutes has already gone by. And then we'll take it off with a slotted spoon and drain it on a towel. And then we can start building the Eggs Benedict from there.
Great. And then one more question for you, Madeline. What about using broth in your hollandaise instead of water?
You're only using a teaspoon. So again, you could use it, but you're not getting a whole, this recipe that I'm using only makes about a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup. So you could use a broth, you could use anything along those lines, but to add another layer of flavor, which is great. So absolutely, you could totally do that. And you're adding that broth and you're adding that liquid just so it doesn't turn into a mayonnaise. Does that make sense?
Great, thank you so much.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the English muffins and prepare a couple more in the toaster. And a really fun thing too about poached eggs is they're super easy. Jerry was on a fishing trip last summer and he texted me and he said, the guys are out, I'm gonna make breakfast. How do I poach an egg? And literally in 3 steps, I said, well, you know, put vinegar in your water to increase the acid. He goes, well, we don't have any vinegar. It's a cabin in Canada and it's not available. I said, well, okay, how about a lemon? You have a lemon up there in Canada. He goes, yes, I have a lemon. I said, great, put it in your water. And it worked beautifully. And the guys were totally impressed. And then the other thing is, Eggs Benedict is a great way to use leftovers. So either you build something with lunch meat, you use something like smoked ribs from the night before or leftover steak. It's such a versatile dish. You can put any kind of twist on it that you'd like. It's really, that's a lot of fun.
Are you saying that Jerry needed your help to poach an egg?
He did.
I love it.
Asked for help and he got it and he nailed it. He totally nailed it. All right, I'm gonna pull these eggs out. Oh, nice. All right, it's got about 10 more seconds to go. All right. All right, I'm gonna pull this egg out. We're gonna drain it and so fun thing too with a little baby poaching, they're so sweet. And then if we're doing a poached egg breakfast with Eggs Benedict when all the kids come over, I'll typically do maybe 8 or 9 poached eggs and then just keep them in a low temperature, like warming drawer, like at 120 degrees, or if your oven has a 150 degrees, you can just put them out on paper towels and they'll just stay there and it works out really well. So do you, how far advanced, how do you do your poached eggs, Niall? In the sous vide?
So, yeah, so basically, it was interesting when I thought about this, you know, because there's so many methods. And so I have 3 methods of poaching eggs. So actually I have a lot more than that, but I'm doing 3 today. So one of the ways is, you want to follow me? So one of the ways is to actually get like a small stainless cup or something along those lines. And then basically you can just throw those right into a steamer. You steam them for about 8 minutes. That'll give you a pretty good egg. It will tighten the white. The yolk itself will be fairly runny. Then there's also a method called sous vide. And so generally sous vide means under vacuum. However, when we talk about sous vide eggs, the egg is already concealed within its own wrapper. So there's been a lot of analysis on how to cook the perfect egg. And a lot of people stand by the 68 degrees Celsius egg. I believe I actually like it around 73 to 75 degrees Celsius, which is in turn about 163 degrees. And so what I have here is an immersion blender. And this immersion blender keeps the water circulating and sets the temperature of the water at 163 degrees. Now, as you can see, it actually goes right up to the point. That's how important these temperatures are, because really the basis of cooking is all about time and temperature. And so This is actually a 75-degree egg. And so what I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to pull this egg out. I think I have 2 in here. And so the best way to handle these eggs, obviously, is to blanch or shock them. And so the best way to do that.
Niall, how long were those eggs in there?
So these were running for about 25 minutes, which is about 5 minutes longer than what I was really kind of hoping to go. But I kind of faded out because I was spacing out and watching you. But the thing is I mean, they're not so temperamental that it's going to cause issue. And so needless to say, I'm going to shock these, and I'm going to take these eggs, drop them into ice water. And so I think I need a wee bit more ice too.
Niall, quick question. For the steaming method, does it not stick to the metal dish? Is it buttered?
So the metal dish actually is, I use what's known as Vegeline, which is like a veggie-based kind of spray. So that's sprayed, and then I drop the egg into there, and then just throw them into the steamer. And obviously, you can do this with, you know, if you have a steam oven or a steam table or, you know, kind of a bain-marie, you know, you can always make makeshift stuff. And so if you have a perforated pan and then set a boiling water underneath it, that basically creates a steam table for you.
Great. Thank you so much.
I'm going to throw a little more ice in here. Make sure that stays nice. So the concept behind the perfect egg is, at what temperature does the yolk and the white set at the same time? And so when I'm cooking Eggs Benedict, I prefer for my white to be just a little bit stiffer, but I also want to run a yolk, just because that's kind of how I like them. Now, at the end of the day, you know, some people like hard eggs. I've always said breakfast is the most difficult thing to cook, and it's because your idea and my idea and his idea and her idea of an over easy egg are all different. And so, you know, really, if you're cooking for the fam, you know, you could probably cook these at 163 degrees for 40 minutes. And then the same thing with like the steam table. You know, if you use the mold, you know, I say 8 minutes because I have a certain consistency that I like the egg. Obviously, you can go longer than that, or you can go shorter than that. But the nice thing about the steam table is you're actually able to watch how firm the whites are, and you can kind of feel how firm the yolks are. So now that these have cooled just a little bit, and they've cooled enough so that I can handle them, that's really kind of what I'm looking for. Now, this is a pretty common finishing egg. So I've seen carbonaras that are finished with eggs like this. I've seen Asian dishes that are finished with eggs like this. So basically, you want to be very gentle when you get into it.
This is where the magic happens, right here.
Say what?
This is where the magic happens, when the shell comes off the egg, and it's like,
yeah, it is when the magic happens. And so basically,
I always hold
this is just a very fancy way to regulate the eggs cooking. And so we're going to gently drop it out of there. And so,
did the white completely cook, or is it a little underdone, or?
So this is kind of the cool part. The white is almost the exact consistency as the yolk.
Huh.
And so the white is not stiff. It is literally lightly gelatinous. However, if we poke into it, it's going to pour out. You know, I've always believed like the white is encapsulating the best part of the egg. It's like the surprise. And when I was a kid, I used to love Cadbury eggs. And so this so much reminds me of kind of a Cadbury egg because, like I said, literally the yolk and the white are of the same consistency. And so it's just a fun technique. And the nice thing about sous vide cooking is that there are so many different like little methodologies, and you know, as you change temperature and as you change time, you know, at about 150 degrees is where an egg starts to set. And so, you know, you can actually do this. You could do an egg at 130 degrees, but for like 8 hours. And so pasteurization begins to take place because it's at 130 degrees for, you know, that amount of time. So it's really all about time and temperature. So I'm going to separate this other egg here. And actually, I'm going to pause for a moment and let's go have a look at our steamed eggs and see how they're doing.
How long were those eggs in there? Woo!
I know, right? Very cool. So these have been about 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
The yolk is fairly stiff. The white is incredibly stiff. So somebody was asking about them sticking. Basically, like I said, I sprayed them a bit, and then if you just take this, then they fold out, just like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold these eggs for a bit, exactly how Madeline said, believe it or not. We're going to take these and we're going to set them. I have this little pan that's got perforations in it. We're going to take these eggs. We're just going to float them over the top of the steam table to keep them warm. Now, real quickly, we're going to build hollandaise. And so there's a ton of different methodologies behind this. What I'm going to show is how to build it stovetop. And then I'm going to show you how you can hold hollandaise, because sometimes what happens is it can kind of, you know, if you just let hollandaise sit out, it kind of gets a film on it or something along those lines. And then you can actually hold it at a certain temperature. So I'm going to drop my yolks. This pan's basically sitting on a double boiler. So I have boiling water underneath this, and then this is my mixing can. We're just going to take this. My ratio is 1 yolk to 2 ounces of butter. So basically what we're building here, what we look for when we're doing this is to take the eggs into what's known as ribbon stage. While I whisk this, which could take a little while, Madeline, what's your next step?
All right, well, I've got one more egg in here poaching away, and I went ahead and built, I'm gonna kind of sneak over here a little bit closer. So I built a little Eggs Benedict, and all it's missing is the Hollandaise sauce, but it's simply the English muffin, a little bit of sauteed spinach, some ham, Black Forest ham. You can use Canadian bacon. You could use regular bacon, whatever you'd like. You could use lunch meat. This is lunch meat. And then I'll go ahead and do a little bit of the Hollandaise sauce on it.
Madeline, I think I'm coming over. That looks delicious.
Isn't that nice? Oh, I just love it. And then to give it just a little extra kick, we'll just top it off with some cayenne pepper. And I had a little fresh chives in the garden. And I even have the little guy, so.
I feel like your garnishing made it very, very fancy.
Just a few simple ingredients, but you know, just a couple of details, and it all works out.
And just so everyone knows, I did share Madeline's poached egg foolproof method, I can't talk, in the comments, as well as your hollandaise sauce recipe, so that way everybody has it.
Wonderful, excellent. So when Jerry and I were first married, neither one of us could cook, and so now at least one of us can kind of pseudo cook. So, oh wait, I got to show you this poached egg. He's so cute. I just think these things are just adorable, and you can just tell that it's It's just the perfect consistency. And when you break into it, it's just a little jammy, a little runny. Ah, so good. So neither one of us could cook. We both love to eat. And so we were, Jerry taught me how to do his Hollandaise sauce, which was half Dijon mustard and half mayonnaise. So I'm really happy we can kind of kick things up a notch. We've come a little ways in about 12 years. But every now and then, so when Carver came up for breakfast this morning, he's like, Mom, are you cooking? I'm like, yes, at 1 o'clock with Niall. And he says, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna make Hollandaise sauce. I said, well, don't touch my setup because I'm ready to go. And he goes, no, I'm gonna do the Hollandaise hack, which in our house, that's the mayonnaise and the Dijon mustard. And he puts it on toast and then he puts an egg on it. And I'm like, you know, buddy, that's not half bad for a college student. So what I've got back here is a little ratatouille from last night. And like I said, you know, Eggs Benedict is a great way. It's a great way to use leftovers. And so this is kind of a pseudo-vegetarian. If you're, you know, like to go a little heavier on the vegetables, ratatouille is a wonderful side to have, not just as a side dish with your fish or your chicken or your mushrooms or what have you, but it makes a great frittata. It's wonderful folded into rice or pasta, and I love it on an Eggs Benedict. And so ratatouille is a French peasant dish of zucchini, eggplant, onion, tomato, garlic, like a bell pepper. Most of your nightshade vegetables goes into a ratatouille, and then garlic, salt, and basil. Basil is key. So I've got a little, the English muffin, the ratatouille. We'll put our little sweet little poached egg on here, and then our Hollandaise. This is, so one of the things, hey Niall, can you, I made some Hollandaise last night, and it basically resembles a stick of butter.
Yeah.
So will this come back to life if I stick it in the microwave?
You know, I gotta be honest, I don't know. I mean, a lot of times if I have leftover Hollandaise, you can actually, you know, we cool it, but it makes like a really good steak topping. So you can just scoop it out and put it on cold on top of the steak, and then finish the steak underneath like a broiler. But I don't have any experience with that.
I might just experiment with that, and you know, yeah, we're kind of playing around. So I topped off the ratatouille Eggs Benedict with a little basil and parsley. That's
looks gorgeous, Madeline.
So happy. I love Eggs Benedict. All right, I'm gonna stick this in the microwave. This could be a colossal flop, or
yeah,
you might have something here.
I think it'll be interesting to see.
As long as it doesn't explode in my oven or explode in the microwave again, I'll be happy. So what is it that you're working on there, Niall?
Say what?
What do you got working on there? What are you whisking up now?
So I just added just my touch of lemon juice, and then I'm actually now looking for my reduction. So I'm going to add my reduction too.
Someone in the comments is saying, if you use the Hollandaise, it will cook the egg and make it lumpy.
What?
They said it will cook the egg and make it lumpy. So we'll see.
Oh, it's
okay.
Hollandaise? Yeah, that's with the So was the question, you're pouring hot liquid into the egg mixture, and why does it not cook and get lumpy? Was that the question?
Oh, was that the question?
So the question, it wasn't a question. They were just making a comment that they think the Hollandaise in the microwave will cook the egg and make it lumpy.
Oh. Well, we're about to find out. I'm not sure.
Find out. Where's my spoon? We're gonna use that. All right. So this was about 20 seconds in the microwave, and it's pretty smooth.
Honestly, it looks pretty good.
It does. It looks really good. You know, I think that the wonderful thing about Hollandaise, and I think what Niall and I are showing you guys here, is that the basic Hollandaise is egg and an acid like the vinegar or the lemon and the butter, and you know, and then once you have that, those components, you can build on it from there, and which is what, you know, Niall is doing. It's layering flavors, and then I'm sticking to a pretty basic. So it's fun. It gives you more room to wiggle and play with than you would think. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I get the rest of that.
Now, I just love all your toys over there. I mean, your colander and your steam oven. It's like, oh my gosh, you're getting a facial and a cooking all in one. I love it.
Yes, it's a bit of an obsession, this whole cooking thing. So basically, my next step is we're going to take a look at some different eggs. So one of the things is these are our English muffins that just came out.
Pretty.
And then got myself a slotted spoon. So these are the kind of the different, you know, this is the one that was steamed. This is the one that was sous vide.
Oh, Niall, those look so good.
They're coming together, right?
Those look great.
I think I got the bad job. Somehow I don't have food at my house, but you both do.
All right.
Katie, next time you do this, you should think about cooking alongside us, like while you're monitoring and doing everything else.
Katie can cook.
That's only mildly challenging.
You'd have to have the fire department on speed dial.
Hey, when Jerry and I were dating, I literally took all the batteries out of my smoke detector because I kept smoking the house down. So, hey. I can do it. Oh my gosh. Okay, now what's happening there?
So I just dumped my reduction in with shallots and everything right in it. And so now I'm going to pass my my Hollandaise. And so basically I'm going to push it through this sieve and get rid of all of the excess stuffs. Any sort of, you know, if any egg is plum or anything along those lines. So my next step is we're going to put this into what's known as an ISI nitrogen infuser. And what this does is it allows us to hold.
That's a fancy smancy whipped cream dispenser, right?
It's a whipped cream dispenser. That's exactly right. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to pour this.
So that's your Hollandaise sauce.
This is the Hollandaise.
Ooh, so instead of emulsing it like I did, you're injecting it with the nitrogen.
That's exactly it.
Ha! That's clever.
So once we get this turned on there. Oh, whoop. So these are not to be confused with CO2. This is nitrogen. And so this is basically, you know, how we charge whipped cream. And so what I'm going to do is put all that on, and then you crack this until you hear the nitrogen actually go in.
Nice.
Actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it twice. Hit it twice.
Do it twice. And now, is that just for insurance, or does it give it extra foam, or what?
Well, the thing is I felt like my Hollandaise was a little hot, and so this also injects a lot of cold into it. It's kind of like whatever's charged inside there is incredibly cold when it comes out.
Nice.
Everyone is enjoying this in the comments. We're getting requests for more products, for more recipes. So we've had cocktails, risotto, fried green tomatoes, crab.
Oh, excellent. Oh, pretty. You know, I think that the hardest part about this right now is I'm going to eat this.
The other great thing is, when you do it like this, you can, so one of the things about Hollandaise is, you know, it's one of those things that it doesn't want to be too hot and it doesn't want to be too cold. And so basically with this, you can set this into a warming unit and basically use it at will. And so like if you have a big dinner party and you prepare your Hollandaise previous, you know, basically you can just make this, sit it into a bath of warm water at about say 145 degrees, and it will hold your Hollandaise for you. It won't cook it.
Nice. You know, and the cool thing is they have sous vides now, like Cool and Nova, and they do, you know, things like that. So for the home cook, you can still play with the same tools and, you know, toys without taking up, you know, the entire bank account and 4 feet of your, oh, pretty. Yeah, look at that.
These are chive flowers.
Oh, they're so nice. Oh, I want to do that too.
They're pretty.
I guess it's fun to note too that this is very similar. Niall is doing very similar to the method that we use at Firefly. So we hold the Hollandaise just like that and usually garnish with the chive flowers.
And you know, it's such a beautiful pop of color, and they really taste like onion. I mean, if you've ever eaten an entire chive blossom, woo! Hi. I hope you're not talking to anybody up close and personal. Oh gosh, that looks so good. Okay, now what's that frowny? You can't see because I'm pointing at it, but what's that? No,
this is dill. Our dill plants are going crazy. They've loved this spring. It's been nice and cool. It's just been a perfect spring for them.
Yeah, that looks good. Looks so good.
All right.
So the other one with chives and chive flowers, and what are the other two topped with?
So this is just a little lemon zest to finish, and just a little chive, and then just a little lemon zest here.
Look at that. That is perfect.
This is the part that I always look forward to.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
When you,
I think you both need a taste test.
when you break through that egg.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. All right, I'm gonna cut through mine. Oh, there we go. That's the money shot. How is it?
That's pretty good.
Oh my gosh. I love how the yolk is so rich with the blends with the Hollandaise.
I know.
Creamy. Oh my God. That's so good.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's just such a, you know, I don't know, it's just such a treat.
It's versatile. You can do it in layers. You can do, you know, an elevated version. You can do a more slip. It's really fun. And I like your idea about putting Hollandaise on steak.
Yeah, so, you know, that's a pretty classic, you know, we used to build many, many years ago in one of my first kitchens, 1989. And we used to build béarnaise in large batches, and then we would hold it cold and then, you know, take a scoop and top it on top of a steak and then throw it in. So Hollandaise, béarnaise, you know, they're fairly similar sauce. And so, you know, sometimes when I have leftover hollandaise, I mean, it's tough to have leftover hollandaise, to be completely honest, because generally we're putting it on everything. Let's dump it on potato. That's like the, especially if you work brunch, all the chefs get together and they just start like, they take whatever's left over from brunch because it's only one service a week. So they end up eating a ton of it and then dumping a ton of hollandaise on everything. So we very rarely have any left over.
Yum, yum, yum. Well, now this has been so much fun, and I really appreciate you and Kristie asking me to do this with you. And this has just been great. I love the way that, you know, breaking it down and then building it back up and just showing how versatile that this is awesome.
Absolutely. It's been great.
Madeline, thank you so much for doing this, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. We're going to miss you tomorrow. Hopefully we'll be back online soon.
Definitely.
Yeah, normally we're preparing to see 600 people today. But it's been great seeing all of you.
It's really been wonderful.
We'll have to do this again because we've gotten great feedback. Thank you all so much, and so many requests for some really great dishes. For personally, the scallops really, the scallop risotto really sings to my heart. But yeah, well, if we super appreciate this, everyone.
Well,
awesome. Cheers,
really
everyone.
Everybody showing up, and happy Mother's Day to everybody out there, and enjoy this weekend. It's just going to be great. I really appreciate everybody taking some time on their weekend to hang out with us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, everyone, I am ending the meeting. We did record today's Zoom, so we will post it soon, I would say in the next couple days. And then if you have any questions about the recipe or any ingredients, please feel free to shoot us an email, or which is katie@ffgrill.com, or you can reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful Mother's Day.